these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted.
Here's my autism diagnosis, here's my tax returns, there's my girlfriend. I don't think you want to see me use the toilet. RFK Jr., the sitting US Secretary of Health and Human Services, does not seem to know what autism is.
They get the shot and 3 months later their brain is gone. This is a holocaust, what this is doing to our country.
To be fair, he later apologized for this. Not for all of it, just for offending Jewish people by mentioning the Holocaust. If you're an RFK fan, this video includes a lot of factual information to debunk his main points. I'll address counterpoints to hopefully make your perspective feel a bit more considered. I will be passionate, but it's for entertainment value, and I hope you show me courtesy in the comments.
These are kids that this is a preventable disease.
Autism isn't preventable nor a disease. It's a neurodevelopmental disorder. That means it's literally just how your brain functions, and the biggest cause is actually genetic. Scientists agree that around 90% of autism can be attributed to genetic traits. Obviously that's not 100%, but it's still an ongoing field of study, so we don't really know everything yet. So if autism is just how your brain functions, how exactly does it function? Well, it varies a lot person to person. The official diagnosis of autism is called autism spectrum disorder because it's a spectrum. People have drastically different symptoms and different levels of those symptoms. Someone over here is referred to as high support needs, so basically more autistic. These are the people that are stigmatized in the media. And then someone over here is referred to as low support needs, or less autistic. The actual specific symptoms vary a lot too. Like for example, my girlfriend will sometimes hit herself when she feels like she's messed up, but I've never felt a desire to do that. So what are some of these varying symptoms that autistic people have? Well, the big one is like a different communication style. Much more literal, less attuned to social cues, less willing to lie in conversation. Autistic people struggle to socialize in a room full of neurotypical people, and neurotypical just basically means like you don't have a mental disorder, but neurotypical people also struggle to socialize in a room full of autistics. This different communication style leads us to mask from a very young age, basically acting neurotypical to fit in. But this puts a heavy energy toll on everyday interactions. Imagine if conversations felt like trying to learn a difficult rhythm game, and you get the idea. Another big one is higher sensory sensitivity, and we also get super invested in niche special interests. Mine is dubstep, by the way. I could go on, but that's all to say that autistic brains just genuinely function differently. From our perspective, it's only a disability because society is structured around neurotypical people. That's not to say society should be structured around autistic people instead, because like that's not fair either, but a more accommodating society is always better. So with that context, let's take a look at these clips again.
This is an individual tragedy as well. Autism destroys families, and these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted.
RFK Jr. believes autism is an individual tragedy and tears families apart. I think it's safe to say he's referring to autistic kids with high support needs here, which only includes less than 5% of autistic people and even 25% of autistic kids. Like, this is not a huge majority or anything. But huge overgeneralization aside, if you have a kid, you're signed up for whatever kid you get. If your kid needs to use a wheelchair, we don't call that a holocaust. Although Hitler did kill a lot of kids with wheelchairs. I just don't think that's the side of the argument you want to be on. Having a high support needs autistic kid is a lot more work for unsuspecting parents, right? But if it happens, autism doesn't have a cure. You're just gonna have to find some way to live with it. Ideally, autistic kids would only be born into families who are willing to love them and support them and raise them properly, but that's not the world we live in.
How old are you?
55.
50. Well, I bet that you've never met anybody with full-blown autism your age.
This seems to imply that autism is a modern invention. Autism's been around forever, but there has been a massive rise in autism diagnosis. The CDC, though, is very clear that this rise is due to better diagnosis practices and more societal acceptance. It's understandable to be skeptical of that. Like, you can't explain it with just better diagnosis. That's too high of a rise. But I believe you absolutely can. Even if you're transphobic, trans people are a very good comparison here. There's been a similar explosion in the amount of transgender people. Unless there's two identical environmental toxins or like a woke bacteria turning people autistic and transgender, I think it's safe to say that's not what's going on here. It lines up much better with this higher cultural acceptance we've seen recently, which leads people to be more comfortable sharing details of their life. Also, there's a reason autism is called neurodevelopmental. The symptoms are most obvious during development, which also explains why RFK has never seen a man with full-blown autism his age. And I haven't even gotten to this part yet. RFK thinks autism is caused by the f***ing vaccine.
I do believe that autism does come from vaccines.
He founded the anti-vax group Children's Health Defense, which in 2019 spread vaccine misinformation in Samoa. This resulted in an outbreak of 5,700 cases of measles and 83 confirmed deaths, mostly kids. The modern anti-vax movement was started by a 1998 study by a guy called Andrew Wakefield, which alleged that the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, and rubella, causes autism. The paper was later retracted because it was based on falsified data. Turns out Andrew Wakefield was paid hundreds of thousands of pounds by a lawyer who wanted ammunition to sue vaccine manufacturers. Andrew also coincidentally had a patent for an individual measles vaccine. He was telling people to get an individual measles vaccine instead of the MMR while owning a patent for it. The study itself falsified kids' medical records and subjected them to dangerous and invasive procedures like shoving shit up their ass. So essentially, this study is complete bullshit and it's the basis for the anti-vaccine movement. Granted, plenty of people are anti-vax for less outwardly insane-sounding reasons, but it remains true that since Andrew Wakefield's study, hundreds of scientific studies have unanimously found no causal link between vaccines and autism. The vast majority of these studies are not funded by Big Pharma, and this has been proven internationally with millions of kids. The reason so many parents are convinced that vaccines cause autism is because symptoms of autism typically become more visible around the same time that they take a bunch of vaccines, including MMR. The timeline just happens to match up. But for RFK Jr., sometimes it's the vaccine, and sometimes it's not. He also said mercury causes autism. Admittedly, he uses it in the context of vaccines, but as we'll get to later, he's very inconsistent and doesn't seem to really know what he believes. His racket about mercury in vaccines actually got the tiny amount that was in them removed by 2001, specifically as a precautionary measure for children younger than 6, despite there being no evidence of any adverse health effects from it. And guess what? Autism rates were literally unaffected. Go f***ing figure. But RFK doesn't just spout bullshit. His conspiracy theories have caused autistic people tangible harm.
FDA's war on public health is about to end. This includes its aggressive suppression of psychedelics, peptides, stem cells, raw milk, hyperbaric therapies, gelatin compounds, anything else that advances human health and can't be patented by pharma.
Let's focus on these two in particular, because they're the most relevant to autism. RFK doesn't specify that they're specifically to treat autism, and to be fair, he probably doesn't only mean it that way, but that is why they're most commonly brought up. So hyperbaric oxygen puts the autistic child in a pressurized oxygen chamber, but there's no actual credible evidence that this works. Chelation, on the other hand, is actively harmful. It involves putting special compounds in the child's bloodstream that bind to important metals, allowing them to be removed from the body. People actually do this for like lead poisoning and whatnot, but in this case, it's so dangerous that at least one autistic child has died from it. Desperate parents trying to cure autism will try a lot of things, and sometimes they'll conclude that whatever bullshit they tried must have worked. That's why I'm sure you can find parents claiming that chelation fixed autism. But any parent willing to baselessly strip metals from their child's bloodstream is not a reliable narrator on their kid's mental health. There is no cure for autism because it's not a disease. So anyway, this guy's the Secretary of Health and Human Services. RFK initially ran as a Democrat before becoming independent, calling Trump a sociopath and a terrible human being. Then he dropped out of the race to endorse Donald Trump. Because of this, Trump said he'd have a big role in healthcare. After winning the election, Trump announced RFK's nomination for the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Obviously, this got a lot of backlash, with over 17,000 doctors, including 75 Nobel Prize winners, urging the Senate to oppose this guy. Despite this, the Senate voted him in, 52-48. Mitch McConnell, of all people, was the only Republican to vote against him. First fucking good thing he's done. So what has RFK done since? It's getting too hot, I need to take this off, I'm sorry. Well, he hired David Geyer. If that name doesn't ring a bell to you, it's the same guy who subjected autistic children to horrific treatments trying to cure them, including but not limited to charging parents $6,000 a month for, and I quote, chemical castration. David Geyer was fined for practicing medicine without a license, and his dad who worked with him lost his medical license. Great guy! RFK's insisted there's some toxin to blame for autism. While obviously we don't know if autism is 100% genetic, it's better to just admit you don't know something than to jump to these quick fixes like mercury.
By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
This is also what I was getting at earlier. Like, he doesn't seem to know what he wants. Like, is it the vaccine or not?
Although if I had to steal man, it's possible that he just realized it wasn't mercury and decided it must be something else.
So to get to the bottom of this, he's promised to make an autism registry. The plan is to collect Americans' private health records, including pharma chains, hospitals, and even wearable devices like your Apple Watch. Basically anything you trusted to be private. Then he's going to use this data to figure out what causes autism? Because we need to find the truth. We already have the truth. There's no mystery about it. Autism is a neurodevelopmental condition that is primarily genetic and is becoming more socially acceptable and documented in recent years. He's also flirted with the idea of wellness farms, forced labor camps for people with substance addictions or psychiatric medications. Many autistic people need to take these as part of daily life, whether it's for ADHD or anxiety or whatever else comes with autism. It's not the first time disabled people have been targeted for camps under the guise of rehabilitation. It's not fun to think about how I either am or will be on this registry, right? Maybe it's unfounded, I don't know. But it makes me think of Nazi Germany, where they'd collect data and round people up in order to put them in camps. RFK also supports Medicaid work requirements, which honestly is kind of one of the lesser of his things. So if you don't know, Medicaid is like healthcare for poor people, essentially. You can get out of these requirements if you have a disability, but it's obtuse to sign up for, and in the case of autistic people, you obviously have to have a diagnosis. Diagnoses are expensive, and when it's specifically targeted at poor people, you can see how that starts to become a problem. Many autistic people rely on social services like Medicaid for therapy and healthcare and basically just being able to live a peaceful life. Not all of us can simply work. So what are we autistic people doing about it? Autism organizations absolutely rallied to stop RFK from getting sworn in, and they're doing a solid job debunking whatever misinformation he spouts. But it's not enough. RFK Jr. is a conspiracy peddling shit who never considers the actual opinions of autistic people whenever he's spouting stuff out of his ancient crusty ass. Nothing about us without us. He was born into immense wealth and privilege, and he's choosing to leverage that power to go after autistic people who are already beat down enough. We need to stand up to him. We need to fight. We need this fucker out of office. We are at a turning point in our country. Protest. Do what you can. This applies to every single one of you.
This is a graph of people who are extremely or very sure that climate change is happening on the top line, and people who are extremely or very sure it isn't happening on the bottom. For nearly 2 decades, the percentage of Americans who are committed climate skeptics has been pretty consistently below 10%. Likewise, if you ask Americans whether global warming is happening, roughly 4/5 will say yes. It didn't change me because I got like a useful piece of data. It changed me because if you had asked me before I saw this graph, I would have told you that probably 50% of people in America thought that climate change is a scam or a hoax. It would be so easy to take those comments from Fox News and share them without any of this context and see, look at how crazy these people are. And what many people would understand by these people is half of the country. But if you believe that, you are one, fighting the wrong fight every day. You think there's a bunch of people who are impossible to convince, so you're not trying to convince them. And two, you're fighting it with the weight of despair tied around your neck.
Aggressively try to convince people that this guy is not the one to lead us. We didn't vote for him. We don't want him. He needs to get the fuck out. If you made it this far, you might be surprised to find that this is actually my first video. I own this other channel called Skyboy that covers Minecraft history, but I've never felt like I can make enough of a real impact there, which is why I've chosen to start this one. What a controversy-free, easy first video for the Minecraft YouTuber! I was diagnosed with autism when I was very young. Luckily, my parents were very supportive, but it still wasn't easy. I went through a lot of like I was still in ABA therapy and whatnot, and I think I have a lot of insights I can bring on this channel. At a time where autism misinformation is on the rise, it feels like no one actually knows what it is. I think it's more important than ever to have a super accessible autistic voice that can educate people. A lot of the existing autism YouTubers don't exactly make great videos, with the exception of this person. Hers are alright, but like I'm sure the information is great, but as a piece of entertainment it doesn't nearly cut it. So I'm hoping to use my existing YouTube knowledge to get eyes on this stuff. I've got big plans, so subscribe. For now though, it's just videos and a Discord server focused on autism that I will link in the description. Have a good one.
The MMR vaccine contains a lot of aborted fetus debris